Let's now get back to our earlier story regarding Ghana likely to return to an IMF program that is submissioned by the Deputy Finance Minister, Dr. John Kumah. We're joined via Zoom to respond by a former Finance Minister, Seth Terkper, on the Finance Ministry's consideration of an IMF bailout if homegrown solutions fail. Of course, we're grateful that you could join us, and we want to start off with, Dr. John Kumah's thoughts on your thoughts actually on the Development Bank official opening tomorrow. What do you feel the premise of this Development Bank is? Is it justified, and what are your expectations?
Well, thank you very much. An investment bank, or development bank is always, justified in an economy because our lending cannot remain short-term. That's one reason. These banks lend, long-term, medium to long-term, which means that the tenor for loans are likely to be longer. And if managed well, it means at lower interest rates. And those are the sort of banks we hear about. CDB, we hear about, other development banks, including Exim Bank. Exim Bank is actually on the trade side, but it's also regarded as a development bank. So I think it's important that we have such a development. But let me say that it is not without precedence. We had a development bank, which was investment bank, back in the 1960s. And it was our desire after the case was won, for the investment bank to come back into its own. You remember it was involved in a case. Now, another initiative, if you recall, from the Mahama era is the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Bank, which is another leverage, for development. So we are getting the right instruments, for long-term development, for market, hopefully. They will be involved in viable projects as we have for the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. So it is a duplication. We now have an investment bank. We are not sure that its mandate has changed. We have the Infrastructure Investment Fund, Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, which is also more on the public side, but could also, help. And then to the extent that the Exim Bank, if it is outward looking as was planned, it's supposed to also assist, businesses, with their capital aspects, infrastructure aspects, equipment, and the rest, which are not, financed with tenors of 3 years, to 5 years, but maybe 10 years. Then like China Exim, Turkey Exim, and the rest, we know them. They give us the big loans, that we are on. So these development-oriented banks, including some which have existed on the commercial bank side, EcoBank Capital and the rest, should be able to place the economy, in the medium term, medium to long term on the right footing. I think we are reliving Nkrumah's dream, the foresight that he had, and I would hope that we would find a way to consolidate all these efforts, if not by merger, through collaboration, so that the nation can benefit from the initiative.
Now, the IMF, Mr. Terkper, you have been all out calling for Ghana to return to an IMF program to deal with recent macroeconomic, exigencies. Recently, we've had the Deputy Finance Minister, John Kumah, speak to my colleague George Rafi about an intent by government to revisit the IMF program on the condition that homegrown programs fail. From your perspective, what about these homegrown policies do you think are not working, first of all?
Well, the point is that where is the homegrown package? You may have seen it, then one may exist internally, but as far as I'm concerned, we have not seen any homegrown package from the government. Remember, we used...
I'm afraid we have lost Seth Terkper there, connection.
All
right, I think he's back. We lost you. Yes, we lost you somewhere, but of course, please continue your submission.
Yes, so my point is, if the government said there is a homegrown policy that exists, I have not seen it. I don't know if you have seen it, and I don't know if any member of the public has seen it. If by a medium-term package, it is what is in the budget, then remember that the ratings agencies, the markets, we've not been able to go back to the market, have already passed their verdicts, on that. So I would only say that if there is a medium-term, homegrown austerity, considering that when you are doing austerity, you have a minimum of 3 years, which is, the normal thing, then we are yet to see. Maybe going into the mid-year review, we will see the package. But once you see the package, it's only when you see a package that you can debate its elements. You want to know, of course, it begins with austerity, expenditure control, which we have been saying, additional revenue measures. So far we have about 11 levies. If you can go to the appendix, you will see they have not helped. We have done things which is hurting industry. On the revenue side, blocking VAT input tax credit is not bringing in, much revenue. The e-levy, I have expressed doubts. One, it is already in the budget, at 7 billion to be added 1 billion every year. It's in the medium term, you can check. So it's not new revenue. So we know these measures already, and they have not helped us to go to the market. And remember, we were to go to the markets for financing the deficit, to the tune of 5 billion last year. We got 3 billion. We could not go for the 2 billion. As we speak, the deficit is 43 billion. I say 43 billion because I still, believe that there was an arithmetical error, if we can call it an error, where the 5 billion bailout was subtracted from 37 instead of adding. So the deficit is 37. And if you consider that, arrears are only 1.9 billion in the budget, we all know that arrears far exceeds that. We are told energy sector, energy sector arrears alone is about 12 billion, 10 to 12 billion US dollars, not cedis. Then we are talking about a deficit which is probably around 15%. Our debt has crossed 80%. The only reason it is below 80 is because of that we don't add bailout, and also we are at the beginning of the year. So in sum, I'm saying that I have gone through some of the difficulties facing the economy. I've gone through some of the policy measures, and I'm saying that, we do not have a policy which we can discuss, which we can debate, to see whether it's viable. So maybe they've shared something with the fund, maybe they know something which we do not know. But the IMF has always been an option for developing countries, and let me say that we did not actually win ourselves off the IMF. We went to the IMF for the COVID loan of 1 billion. We were among the first to rush, for it. We went to the IMF, we collected the SDR 1 billion, 2 billion, up to about 6 billion US dollars has flowed on account of COVID, including Bank of Ghana. It has not provided a relief. So if all these were to provide a relief, and please let us quantify the 6 billion. If you multiply it even by 6, you're talking about 30 billion, which is about half of what DRA brings in. If all this injection between 2020 and 2021 did not help us get out, the situation, considering that the ECF, which we did was for slightly below 1 billion. And here we are talking about 6 billion, which has not helped. Then there is something systematically wrong. And when you are at that point, and you can't go to the market, your ratings are going down, and the rest, everybody runs away, from you, and your last resort for policy credibility, which, by the way, is not just the NDC that used it, but if you go to Bank of Ghana, the governor used, that expression. Then I think that inflation is not kind to us, the external situation is not kind to us. So yes, it is a viable option. I stopped talking about it because government has said categorically that they are not going. And so then at that point, I kept saying, then give us the alternative. And now we are told the alternative does not seem to be working. So I think, my final point on this is that, if we are going to go, we might as well bite the bullet. Why? Because the situation will continue deteriorating, and if we are not able to get, the money we need, or the domestic, bond market, we know it, that we are auction failures. Government is never able to raise domestic, and the only glimmer of hope is the news that some banks may give us 1 billion. We are yet to go to Parliament. Remember, the deficit of 43 billion, if you divide it, even by 8, is 5 billion. If you divide by 7, it's 6.1 billion. So even the glimmer of hope of 1 billion is just about 1/5 or 1/6.
So basically,
Yes.
Yeah, so basically, even though government is opting for an IMF program, per your statement and per the analysis that several economists have made, it cannot solve the entire macroeconomic challenges that we currently face as a nation. We're grateful, Seth Terkper, for having analysis on this. Yeah.
Yes, we're running out of options. So
we have no choice.
Yes, all the things that have been thrown. Well, it seems that way, and so we just wait for the mid-year review, to see either we go to a fund, to the fund, or whether we will have a credible homegrown policy to debate.
We're grateful that you could join us, Mr. Seth Terkper. He's a former finance minister, helping us appreciate developments regarding government soon returning to an IMF program if homegrown policies fail. That's a condition.